Balance divides attention, focus multiplies results. Too often we fall into the trap of thinking that life should be perfectly balanced, that every area should receive equal time, equal energy, and equal devotion. But the reality is, balance divides your attention into fragments, and when attention is divided, progress slows down. You can't run north and south at the same time. You can't chase 10 rabbits and expect to catch even one. Focus is what multiplies your results because it gives all your strength, energy, and effort a single direction. Think about the great achievers in history. They weren't remembered for being balanced. They were remembered for being focused. They poured themselves into their vision, into their craft, into their mission. While others tried to give everything a little bit of attention, they gave what mattered most their full attention. And that focus created breakthroughs that balance never could. Now, that doesn't mean we ignore the rest of life. It means we stop pretending that everything is equally important. If you want to achieve excellence in anything, your career, your health, your finances, your relationships, you must decide what comes first. You must identify the essentials and give them your best. When you focus on the essentials, the rest of life begins to arrange itself around them. Let's take health as an example. You cannot balance eating healthy meals with a steady diet of junk food and expect transformation. That kind of balance destroys progress. What you need is focus. Focus on nutrition, exercise, rest, and discipline. When you focus, your energy grows, your mind sharpens, and your body responds. Balance asks you to compromise. Focus demands commitment. Or think about building wealth. You can't balance saving with reckless spending. You can't balance investing with constantly draining your resources. True financial freedom doesn't come from balancing the wise and the foolish. It comes from focus. Focus on disciplined habits and strategies that multiply over time. Balance looks like safety, but focus creates growth. Relationships tell the same story. You cannot balance connection with neglect and expect intimacy to flourish. If you want strong relationships, you need focus, time, presence, listening, and effort directed toward the people who matter most. Focus communicates value. Focus tells the other person, you are worth my full attention. And in return, that investment deepens bonds that last. The truth is, balance sounds attractive because it feels safe. It allows us to dabble in many areas without fully committing to any of them. But dabbling never creates mastery. Dabbling never creates excellence. Only focus does. And once you understand that, your life begins to change. The irony is that when you focus on the essentials, you eventually create the appearance of balance. Because your health improves, your finances grow, your relationships strengthen, and your work advances. It looks balanced from the outside, but it was focus on the inside that built it. You can't achieve balance by chasing balance. You achieve it by choosing focus. So the question to ask yourself is not, how do I balance it all? But what deserves my focus right now? What single action, what discipline, what priority, if you gave it your full attention, would multiply your results? That is the question that leads to progress. Remember, balance divides attention, focus multiplies results. If you want a life of growth, clarity, and achievement, stop trying to juggle everything and start cutting away the distractions. Choose your essentials, commit to them with focus, and let that focus become the multiplier of your results. Life is full of choices, full of demands, and full of distractions. Every day you and I wake up with a limited amount of time, energy, and attention. And yet, the world will try to convince us that everything is equally important, that every request deserves our yes, that every activity deserves our time. But the truth is this, not everything deserves equal weight. The difference between those who merely drift through life and those who accomplish something meaningful is the ability to distinguish between what matters and what does not. Consider this: if you spend your day answering every message, chasing every distraction, and reacting to every interruption, you may feel busy, but you won't necessarily feel productive. Activity doesn't always equal achievement. Balance is not about dividing yourself equally among all these demands. It's about deciding which ones deserve the bulk of your focus. Focus is a discipline. It's the willingness to say no to the many so you can say yes to the few that truly move the needle in your life. Think about a farmer. If he tries to plant every kind of seed in every patch of soil he owns, scattering them with no order, no care, and no focus, what kind of harvest will he get? A small one, if any. But if that same farmer decides to cultivate 1 or 2 fields with care, pulling weeds, watering, fertilizing, focusing on what he can manage, then he gets a harvest worth celebrating. Not because he did everything, but because he did the right things. The same applies to our lives. The key is not balance. The key is focus. Most people spread themselves too thin. They want to balance ambition with laziness, growth with comfort, excellence with mediocrity. But life doesn't reward balance between opposites. It rewards those who focus their energy on the habits and actions that create results. If you want better health, you can't balance exercise with overeating. If you want more wealth, you can't balance saving with constant spending. If you want stronger relationships, you can't balance connection with neglect. You must choose which side of the scale deserves your weight and lean into it. Success in any area requires us to give unequal weight to unequal things. Some tasks are critical, some are trivial. Some relationships elevate us, some drain us. Some habits build us, some destroy us. The tragedy is when people treat all of these as equal. The wise understand that every yes is also a no. Every time you say yes to a distraction, you're saying no to your dreams. Every time you say yes to comfort, you're saying no to growth. And every time you say yes to mediocrity, you're saying no to excellence. But when you learn to give the proper weight to the things that truly matter, something remarkable happens. Your life begins to align. It may not look like balance at first. You'll spend more hours learning than lounging, more time working than wasting, more focus on your goals than on gossip. But eventually, the rewards of that focus create the kind of balance others envy. You'll have health because you gave it weight. You'll have wealth because you gave it discipline. You'll have strong relationships because you gave them time. Balance becomes the byproduct of focus. So don't fall for the myth that everything deserves equal attention. It doesn't. Choose your priorities carefully. Put your weight where it counts. And watch how the power of focus transforms your results, your character, and ultimately your life. Everyone wants to be successful. Everyone wants to live a life of purpose, achievement, and fulfillment. But very few people reach the heights they dream of. And it's not because they aren't capable. It's not because they lack intelligence or opportunity. It's because they never learned one of the most powerful principles of achievement. Focus creates mastery. Most people spread themselves too thin. They chase every opportunity, dabble in a dozen different directions, and hope that somehow, by touching everything, they'll end up with greatness. But the truth is, you can't master anything if your attention is divided everywhere. Excellence requires focus. You can't expect to harvest a rich crop if you're planting seeds in 50 different fields and never staying long enough to water them. Think of the great musicians, the great athletes, the great leaders. They didn't become who they are because they tried to balance a little practice with a little distraction, a little discipline with a little laziness. They became masters because they gave their craft their focus. For hours, for years, they poured themselves into sharpening one skill, one pursuit, one mission, and as the saying goes, what you focus on expands. Energy flows where attention goes. Focus is not about ignoring everything in life. It's about deciding what matters most and committing to it with intensity. If your health matters, then focus on it until the right habits become part of your identity. If your career matters, then focus on the disciplines that grow your skills and expand your value in the marketplace. If your family matters, then focus on giving them your presence, not just your leftover time. People often ask, but what about balance? Don't we need balance in life? And the answer is simple. You don't find balance by giving everything equal attention. You find balance by focusing on the essentials. When you pour your attention into what truly matters, the other parts of your life begin to align. A person who focuses on health has more energy for work and relationships. A person who focuses on discipline creates more financial freedom, which reduces stress in every other area. Balance is the fruit, focus is the root. Mastery doesn't happen overnight. It's not a product of one big decision or one burst of motivation. It's the reward of steady focus over time. A little progress every day compounds. The violinist who practices for 2 hours a day, every day, doesn't just improve, they transform. The entrepreneur who focuses on learning, serving customers, and refining their vision doesn't just build a business, they build a legacy. But here's the danger. Distractions will always try to steal your focus. Comfort will whisper, take it easy. Excuses will say, you can do it later. The world will offer you endless options to trade your focus for entertainment, for noise, for activity that feels busy but leads nowhere. And every time you say yes to distraction, you say no to mastery. The good news is focus is a choice. Every morning, you wake up with the power to direct your attention. Will you scatter it across dozens of meaningless pursuits, or will you invest it in what builds your future? That's the real question. Because if you invest your focus wisely, you will not only improve, you will master, and mastery is what sets you apart. Mastery is what makes you valuable, fulfilled, and remembered. So let me leave you with this challenge: choose your focus. Cut away the noise, eliminate the distractions, and decide what deserves the best of you. Because in the end, you don't get remembered for the things you dabbled in. You get remembered for what you mastered. And mastery only comes to those who focus. Discipline beats distraction. That is one of the simplest truths in life, yet it is one of the hardest to live by. Everyone wants to achieve more, to build more, to become more. But most people get lost because they confuse activity with achievement. They chase too many things, spread themselves too thin, and end up giving away their time to distractions that never bring them closer to their goals. Discipline is the bridge that takes you from wishing to winning, from intentions to results. Without it, focus dissolves, and your energy is wasted on things that do not matter. Think about the people who rise to the top in any field. They are not the ones who balanced every interest, every option, every comfort equally. They are the ones who practice discipline. They learned to say no to what looked good, so they could say yes to what was essential. They cut away distractions and poured themselves into the few activities that produced the most return. And over time, the consistency of their focus created excellence. Discipline is what gives focus its power. You can decide what is important, but without the discipline to follow through, it will only be another intention left undone. You can write down your goals, but without the discipline to guard your time and energy, your goals remain words on a page. Discipline is the daily choice to honor what you've committed to, even when your mood changes, even when the distractions are louder, even when the easier path tempts you to settle. Most people think they need balance, as if life were a set of scales where every area deserves equal weight. But if you balance your discipline with your distractions, the distractions will always win. Why? Because distractions are designed to be easy. They offer instant pleasure, instant comfort, instant escape. Discipline, on the other hand, demands effort. It asks you to delay gratification, to work through discomfort, to stay consistent when no one is clapping for you yet. But it is that very effort that builds strength, character, and achievement. The person who practices discipline develops something that the distracted person never will: momentum. Every day of focused discipline adds up like compound interest. Each choice builds on the last until the results become undeniable. The body transforms, the bank account grows, the relationships deepen, the skills sharpen, and what once felt like a struggle eventually feels like a way of life. The disciplined person no longer has to fight distractions as often, because the habit of discipline itself becomes stronger than the temptation of ease. Here's the good news: discipline is not something you are born with, it is something you build. It begins with small decisions: choosing to finish the task instead of scrolling your phone, choosing to read instead of wasting another hour on noise, choosing to invest instead of spending every dollar. Each small act of discipline trains the mind to focus. And as your focus grows, your results multiply. Soon, what others call balance, you will simply call order, because your life will reflect the clarity of your focus and the strength of your discipline. In the end, success is not about how much you tried to balance. It is about how much you were willing to cut away. It is about your ability to discipline yourself against distraction, to stay on course when others drift, to hold yourself accountable when no one else is watching. The world is filled with distractions, but it rewards discipline. So don't chase balance. Choose focus, and remember, discipline always beats distraction. Life becomes complicated when we confuse what is urgent with what is important. Most people spend their days running after urgent things, emails, phone calls, small crises, other people's priorities. And at the end of the day, they feel exhausted, yet strangely unfulfilled, because the important things, the real priorities, were left untouched. That is why the principle of first things first matters so much. Putting first things first means identifying the few essentials that, if done consistently, change the entire direction of your life. It means recognizing that not everything on your plate deserves your time, your energy, or your focus. Some things can wait. Some things you should say no to. But the essentials, the things that shape your health, your relationships, your work, and your personal growth, those must come first. Consider your health. You can't trade it for convenience or neglect it in pursuit of temporary gains. Without health, everything else eventually crumbles. That's why a commitment to exercise, to good food, to rest, these are not extras. They are first things. Because when you care for your body, you gain the strength and energy to carry the rest of your responsibilities with power. The same is true with relationships. Too many people sacrifice family, friends, and meaningful connections because they are too busy. But ask yourself, what is success worth if you have no one to share it with? What is the value of achievement if you lose the people who matter most along the way? Relationships are not something you fit in after the work is done. They are part of the work. Listening, spending time, being present, those are first things too. Then there is your personal growth. Many people treat learning as optional, as if once school ends, education ends. But growth is not a side project. Growth is life's fuel. If you're not growing, you're shrinking. If you're not learning, you're falling behind. Reading, reflecting, journaling, sharpening your skills. These are first things because they make you more valuable to yourself and to others. When you practice putting first things first, something remarkable happens. You discover that balance is not something you chase, it is something that emerges naturally. Because when your foundation is strong, the other pieces fall into place. You don't have to juggle endlessly or stretch yourself thin. You simply give priority to the essentials, and the rest either finds its place or falls away. The problem is that most of us know what our first things are, but we let them slide. We tell ourselves, I'll start exercising when work slows down, or I'll spend more time with my family once this project is over, or I'll read that book when I have more free time. But the truth is, if you wait for the perfect time, it will never come. There will always be another demand, another distraction, another excuse. First things must be done first, not when it's convenient, not when you feel ready, but now. And here's the good news, putting first things first doesn't always require massive changes. It begins with simple choices. Choosing to go for a walk instead of scrolling your phone. Choosing to sit down for dinner with your family instead of working late one more night. Choosing to spend 15 minutes reading a book instead of wasting 15 minutes on distractions. Small choices repeated daily compound into enormous results. So let me remind you, life will always offer you more to do than you can possibly handle. But if you focus on everything, you'll accomplish nothing. If you focus on the few things that matter most, you'll create a life of meaning, strength, and fulfillment. That is the power of putting first things first. Most people live their lives trying to juggle everything: work, family, health, friendships, hobbies, entertainment, and ambition. And because they're trying to balance it all, they end up with little progress in any of it. They wake up tired, they go through the day scattered, and they fall asleep wondering why life feels so overwhelming. But here's the truth: you don't need balance. What you need is focus. And more importantly, you need clarity, because clarity sharpens direction. Balance sounds good in theory. It sounds like wisdom. But what does balance really mean? Does it mean giving your work the same energy you give your distractions? Does it mean splitting your commitment evenly between your dreams and your excuses? Balance can become a dangerous trap because it suggests everything deserves the same attention, but not everything does. Some things are urgent, Some things are important, and some things don't matter at all. You can't treat them equally. You can't spread your energy evenly and expect greatness. Success is built by focus, and focus requires clarity. Imagine trying to cut down a tree with a dull blade. You can swing all day and still have little to show for it, but sharpen that blade, and suddenly the same swing carries far more power. Clarity is the sharpening stone of life. Without it, you waste your strength on noise and distractions. With it, every effort goes further. Every action counts, and every day builds towards something meaningful. Think of the people you admire, the ones who create, achieve, and live with purpose. Do you think they balance everything equally? No, they focus. They decide what matters, and they give it their best. The great athlete doesn't balance training with laziness. He focuses on discipline. The great leader doesn't balance vision with fear. She focuses on courage. The great parent doesn't balance presence with neglect. They focus on love and time. Focus creates mastery, and mastery creates results. Here's the irony: when you focus on the essentials, when you give yourself fully to the right things, you end up creating a life that looks balanced. Because when your health is strong, when your relationships are nurtured, when your work is fruitful, and when your growth is steady, people say, "Look, you've got balance." But you didn't chase balance. You chased clarity, and clarity sharpened your direction. Clarity means asking yourself the hard questions: what do I want? What truly matters? What deserves my best energy? Because life will always offer you 1,000 distractions. Entertainment will call for your attention. Laziness will beg for your time. Other people's opinions will compete for your focus. If you don't have clarity, you'll give in to all of them. But once you're clear, distractions lose their power. Your yes becomes stronger, and so does your no. Remember this: discipline without clarity feels like a burden. But discipline with clarity feels like freedom. You know why you're saying no to certain things. You know why you're sacrificing today. You know why you're giving your best effort. The why gives power to the what. So don't chase balance. Chase clarity. Don't spread yourself thin. Sharpen yourself like a blade. Decide what matters most and focus on it with intensity. Eliminate the distractions, ignore the noise, and live each day with direction. Because clarity doesn't just sharpen your vision, it sharpens your life. And when your life is sharp, precise, and focused, success is no longer an accident. It's the natural outcome. You don't need balance, you need focus. And focus begins with clarity.